Welcome to the Paperless Productivity Podcast, where we give you the tips, tricks, and know-how to solve your biggest workflow challenges and bring greater productivity into your workplace every day. Charge up your laptop and order those extra business cards. It's conference time in the justice community. Here at ImageSoft, we're getting pumped up to be part of two major events for us and our customers. The Court Technology Conference, which happens September 10th through the 12th in New Orleans, and CommunityLIVE, which is Hyland Technology's annual user conference, happening September 15th through the 19th in Cleveland, Ohio. So with topics like artificial intelligence, data governance, automation, and digital transformation on the minds of many, the time has never been better to gather together and find new ways to address the challenges and opportunities available to all those who serve in this dynamic industry. Today, here to talk about all the hot topics and can't miss sessions of these two conferences is ImageSoft's marketing manager, Kevin Ledgister. How are you doing, Kevin?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Kate. Glad to be back on the channel.
Excellent. So let's start with the Court Technology Conference, which I know is put on every other year by the National Center for State Courts. I know there's a couple of big sessions that everyone is really looking forward to at CTC this time, and so let's start with those. Can you tell me a little bit about the sessions on CMS intelligence, for example? Why is this such a big topic in the justice community right now?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because artificial intelligence is on everybody's minds, and like all industries, the justice industry is trying to figure out, how do we leverage this technology? And they're actually inviting somebody from Israel that has been doing some interesting things to leverage the technology. Mm-hmm. So first of all, when it comes to artificial intelligence, in a courtroom, we're not necessarily talking about having robots in there and having kind of like an iRobot episode, but it's really something that courts are looking to in terms of, how do we make judgments which are consistent based on the facts? How do we make sure that our sentencing guidelines and the sentences that courts will apply are also consistent across the board, right? There's nothing that's more upsetting to a community when you have two people who commit the same type of crime, the same level, and one seems to go scot-free and the other one, spends half of his life in jail. Mm. So that's the other thing. And then the third thing is just, how do we plan out for using court resources? And that's the other challenge with courts as well, too, because sometimes it's hard to predict how long a case will go, and based on the facts and the factors that are there, sometimes they can kind of tell. So using artificial intelligence can help with that. It can help to gather some of those case documents together, mm-hmm. so that you can look at relevant cases. Those are presented to you automatically in a sense, and also help you to determine, what those sentencing guidelines should be. So that's really a big part of where we see the initial beachhead for artificial intelligence within the courtroom. Now, the interesting thing is that the majority of information that courts need to make those kind of judgments and courts need to look at are actually not really contained in the core or case management system that has a lot of data about a case, but it's actually contained within the documents themselves. And that poses a particular challenge for courts, because a lot of times those documents are simply just images that are sitting in a bucket that's tied to a folder to a case. Mm-hmm. They're not really accessible that way. So, from our perspective, we've been at this business a long time, and we don't sell court case management systems, but we do work with enterprise content management technology that connects with those. And one of the things that we see happening with that is that we've worked really hard to make the data on those documents accessible, so a judge can perform a search looking at various aspects of a court case and begin to find related cases very easily, so that they can help to make a determination and even look at the sentencing guidelines for those related cases as well too. So it's not as advanced as simply pushing a button and have everything pop up for you on a screen, but we believe that we're that next step in terms of what can we do to help court officials and court users really get at that information data that they need, whether it's by making the documents easily to text search, as well as being able to have the metadata text searchable as well too. So for instance, you may be looking for a particular case. You might be looking at, for instance, a burglary, and it's a criminal case. You can look up all kinds of information. You're trying to find cases with similar elements that are in there. But one of the things you might want to look at too is a lot of courts, what they do is they actually will have what they call case types, and they're very, very specific based on the type of case and and where it falls in terms of the criminal codes and those types of things. And so by having that metadata along with the text and the documents together, those things can actually form very powerful searches to find the type of documents and related cases that can really help the court not only to come up with something that's very consistent, but also something from a community perspective. They can feel really good about that. Justice has been served, and that they are really consistent. And one particular party or race or whatever it is you want to inject into it isn't being unfairly treated compared to another. So that's where we see some of the artificial intelligence really playing into the court space.
Now, that definitely sounds interesting. I can imagine that a lot of people are going to want to hear about that because it's such a big topic across so many industries. So I bet that's going to be a pretty packed session.
I think so. I think so.
So, but that's not the only big session or, a big topic that's going to be covered at this conference. So what are some of the other sessions at CTC that you think are really going to catch everyone's attention?
Well, I hope the sessions that ImageSoft puts on is going to be a big session.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that one. Yeah.
But I'm not going to go into that right now. Actually, actually, one of our senior justice consultant, Brad Smith, he's actually sitting on a panel, actually for government procurement and they're helping courts to think through the procurement process and what are the best practices that can help along with that. So we think that would be a good one, but. The one that I'm kind of focused in on is really one on data governance or data governance, depending on, if you say potato or potato.
Right.
And it's, it almost sounds it could be sounding interesting as watching paint dry, but it is a pretty powerful thing. So if you think about what we just talked about in terms of artificial intelligence and, to make artificial intelligence really, really effective, you have to make the data as accessible and as consistent as possible. Well, the same thing applies in terms of data governance in that, data is really becoming the strategic asset for courts. And it's not just in terms of determining court cases as what we just talked about, but really how do we govern the operations and transparency of the court, right? So give you an example, when let's suppose you have a drunk driver and it's his third offense and he's going to lose his license and he also has child support payments, so he's not going to be at work. So there's all kinds of different things that factor into the fact that, this person has been convicted of a crime, right? And the court has to notify all these different agencies and all these different parties that are effective downstream, from this criminal case. And in a typical court case, what ends up happening is that you've got some poor clerk somewhere in the court that once a decision has come down, they have to, notify, the jail that, somebody's going to be spending some time there because of a jail sentence. They have to notify the DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles, because of a license suspension. They may have to notify the state, a number of different state agencies as well, and then maybe they have to notify, the child support people that are, that are along with their social services. So there's all kinds of different agencies where data needs to flow back and forth. And really governing that data and thinking through in terms of how accessible is that data, how accurate is that data, and how standardized is that data, it becomes really, really, really critical. And we've seen so many times where, because so much of the stuff is done manually that, mistakes are made, information that doesn't flow correctly, and think about this. One time I did a search. I was looking for somebody. I was looking for a David Smith, and I'm thinking, well, Smith is a common name, but how many Davids are there? And I remember in one state, I think there was like over 1,000 different David Smiths. Like, okay, how do we narrow down that search? So those are some of the challenges that we run into in terms of, for data governance. And then it gets to the next level too, where even within a court itself, think about this. Let's suppose the court's got 3 different systems, and all 3 different systems all need to share information with each other. So from a IT perspective, that means that you have to have 9 different integrations going back and forth to have these different systems connect. And that's a lot of information to maintain. Who has the single source of truth in terms of the data, and how do we make sure that we have consistent name spellings and addresses and data that's being shared amongst those different systems that may even operate within a single court. So one of the things that we try to do and what we try to talk about, and it's probably not going to be covered in this session, but for sure, we can maybe follow this up with a future podcast is, how does enterprise content management play into a solution like that? And one of the ways that we see it happening is that by flowing information through enterprise content management first and teaching these different systems how to interrogate the enterprise content management system, you can go from 9 integrations down to 3. And not only can you reduce the number of integration points that you have, but also the information that goes back and forth becomes much cleaner, much more accurate, because you're not depending on individual humans entering the same information into different systems, independently. And then, of course, you introduce human error. But also then it's easier for us to determine, well, who has the single source of truth, which system actually has this particular chunk of data as a data of record that we can trust and verify that all the others will look to align themselves against or to check themselves against. So those are all those different things that, in terms of, courts taking this next generation step in terms of how do we leverage that data for transparency, making information available to the public, making information available to other agencies and connecting with them. We see that, we think that for courts to take that next step, that really having a system that's on the level of an enterprise content management system is really going to be key for that. So I'm excited for that session, and I don't know if I'll actually get to attend. I'm going to be at the conference, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to attend that because I also have some other responsibilities at the conference as well too. But I think it's also going to be a really interesting one that's going to really spur a lot of thought and conversations for next year.
Yeah, maybe some good future podcast episodes, some things to talk about, because I can imagine that's going to have a lot of people talking as well.
I really do believe so, and data is becoming more and more critical for court operations, and we're seeing it happen internationally, and really we're starting to see that start to affect a lot of courts here. So it's going to be pretty exciting stuff.
I agree. All right, well, let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk about CommunityLIVE. So this is a little bit of a different event than CTC for a couple of different reasons, but one of them is that there's a lot of different industries that are served at this event, not just the courts, right?
That is correct. There's state and local governments, there's insurance companies, there's higher education, manufacturing, general businesses of all different sorts, service industries. So you're right, Kate. It's not just courts. It's really a broad-based show, and that's actually the power of that too, because when you think about it, in a lot of different industries, they will have similar challenges, even though the process might be a little bit different, the names might be a little bit different. How they solve those issues, could very well be the same, and that's really the power of that learning. Is that you look at how another industry solved a very similar problems here, and then you ask the question, hey, can I do that, in my business or in my operations or in my organization? And the answer to that is yes. And so that's one of the great values of this conference, and one of the reasons why I love going to this conference. Yeah,
a lot of collaborative learning, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, can you tell me a little bit more about it and what we can expect to learn from this? So what sessions do you see being more popular at this event, and why do you think that different attendees from different industries will want to be part of those?
Well, there's a lot of sessions at this, so I couldn't even come close to even touching the full agenda. But there's a couple of areas that I think that that we've been hearing a lot of rumblings about for this past year, and I think are going to pop up to be big sessions this year. One is on enterprise search, and what enterprise search is that you think about this in any organization or in any company, business or operation, you have information and data that's spread all over the place. You have it in emails or in somebody's folder on their computer, the laptop hard drive, shared folder somewhere in a database, information spread out all over the place. And at different times, businesses or organizations are called upon to access that information. In the government's case, it might be a public records request. Mm-hmm. In the federal government, it's we call that FOIA, and for state and local governments, we call it public records requests. They're not actually covered under federal law, even though for many of the state and local governments, they kind of model their rules and regulations and laws regarding that based on the federal law. Or if you're a business and for some reason you're entering into a party in a lawsuit, there's discovery, and when discovery happens, you need to be able to find and provide information. Or if there's been a breach of security, you have to go through and find out how deep was that security, how severe was that breach, what was all affected, what was all touched, what's sitting out there that you don't know about. And so there's all this information content out there. And so having an enterprise search tool that can go out and search and find different bits and pieces of information and stick that all in one spot, or make it accessible that you can actually track the information down, is critical. So in the case of a state and local government, they get a public records request, and instead of having to tap into all these different systems and log in, all this different stuff, if you have an enterprise search engine that's connected to these, you can do one query and it can hit all those different systems and go out. I've actually seen this where they will actually install the software in an organization on a laptop, for instance, and do a search for, let's say, social security numbers. And we know what a social security number typically looks like, right? 3 digits, dash, 2 digits, dash, 4 digits, or that type of a pattern. And it's amazing how it goes out and find all kinds of people's social security numbers that are sitting really out in the open that nobody is even aware of.
Wow.
That those things exist. So from a security perspective, that could be really helpful. Responding to those public records requests is also helpful too. And just one of the biggest and scariest things, and what keeps a lot of IT people up at night is what don't we know? What information do we have that needs to be protected, that needs to be secured, that's sitting out in the open, that if we get breached, we're going to get a huge fine. They may end up losing their job. So they want to tamp down all these things. And we all know in all these systems, really today, it's not even so much the technology today that's the weak point. It's really us humans that are the weak point, right? You get that email that says, hey, click here to update your password because your password is expiring, and it looks just like an email from your company, but it really isn't. And then you log into some foreign sites, and all of a sudden, somebody over in some foreign country has got your credentials and can log in and gain all kinds of access to your system. So those are the things that we're seeing in terms of a big session this year, that a lot of people are thinking, how do I protect our data? And it's all part of data governance. How do I protect it? How to secure that? Just because the risk just continues to increase.
Yeah, we've been seeing so many articles recently, so much news about different state agencies where those kinds of things are happening. Sometimes it's from those random emails that will come in. Sometimes it's other ways of hacking into the system. So yeah, I think that's definitely going to be a big topic. So that's going to be a good session. So
I think so too. I mean, even if you're not in the government, think about this. You've heard of department stores that have had their systems hacked and their credit cards leaked, right? And if they can track down and say this particular database was hacked, we know which ones were actually accessed. You can notify those people, and even though there's a fine, even though it's bad publicity, at least if you get a notification that says, hey, your credit card was hacked, you can contact your credit card holder and get that changed and provide some additional security. The problem that you run into is when you don't know that they access a particular area, because you didn't know that information was sitting out in the clear. And now what happens is your customers can't protect themselves, right? Because they don't know that it's there. And then their credit card number gets sold for $2,500 on the black market, and pretty soon these mysterious charges start showing up on their credit card. So that's really, part and parcel of that is just thinking about how do we protect and manage our data and respond to requests for information.
Absolutely. So you've been going to CommunityLIVE for quite some time now. Do you have a favorite element of this event outside of the sessions, or something that you always look forward to?
Besides the desserts that they serve at lunch and dinner every day?
That's always a good part.
Oh, yeah, I know. That's, the sweets are my weakness. So going there is somewhat of a treat. And my wife's not there, so she can't tell me what I can't eat. But probably the
conference
best
calories don't count, right?
I know, yeah, they don't count. Right? Isn't that what they say? Conference calories. I love that. That's a new great saying.
There you go.
One of my favorite things to do, though, and although I'm in marketing, I was in technical sales for many years with enterprise content management, and I've met with hundreds or probably thousands of different organizations, from Fortune 100 companies to very small organizations, and I got asked all kinds of unique questions about what can you do, what problems can you solve. Hey, I've got this challenge. Is there a way to solve this? And so it's forced me to think in a lot of different ways that that perhaps, sitting in your own organization, there are things that you would never even think to ask. And so when I get to sit down with customers at this conference and have these forward-looking conversations, like, what are you challenged with today, or what are some of the things you'd like to do, or what are some areas of your organization that you wish there was a solution for, but you just can't find? And we have these conversations, and then we figure out that there's a way that we could solve some of these. A lot of times, the stuff that they already have, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. And when you see their eyes just grow big as saucers, like, we can really do this. And then they go home and they begin to implement that, and they make those changes, and you hear back from them to say that, hey, we did this, and it's just made a world of difference. It's saved me X number of hours a day, or it's just made a huge difference in what we do. And everybody leaves work at the end of the day calmer, refreshed, energized, because they feel like they accomplished something, as opposed to before, when they were frustrated and the work was piling up, and there's a backlog that they can never touch, and it was frustrating because they can't find what they're looking for. That just I just get a great high just from having those conversations. So I love doing that as part of being at the conference.
Yeah, it's probably great to be able to hear about the other side of it, and being able to hear those outcomes and everything, which, like you said, in a regular, business setting every other day of the year, you may not get an opportunity to connect with them quite as much as you would at a conference setting like this. So that's pretty great.
It is awesome. And one of the things that we've been seeing more and more is, with businesses just changing so fast these days, and customers getting so much more advanced, that our customers are faced with the challenge of having to respond quicker. And so, having and to digitally transform at a rate that they've never had to think about before. So having the ability for them to look at these low code solutions where they can implement something, and it doesn't have to be the deepest technical person to do it, but it could be someone at the business level that can implement a lot of changes, really just revolutionizes these organizations and begins to change how they approach technology. And let's face it, right? For a lot of businesses, a lot of companies that are out there, the products that they're offering are fairly comparable and fairly competitive with other products that are out there. And so one of the ways that companies try to really be competitive and really to increase their profits is lowering their internal costs, lowering that internal business friction that they have, and being more efficient. And if they can do that, they can generate, they can increase more of their profit margin that way, and that increases their competitiveness in the field. So those are some things that we're trying to do in terms of working with our customers, and why we think that conferences like these are so important.
That's an excellent point. And it sounds like these are going to be a really great jumpstart for the fall. So I'm excited to hear all about them when you and the team return. So can we have you back on here afterwards to talk about what you learned at the conference?
You sure can.
All
and
right.
Maybe I'll keep track of my desserts too, so you can see what I all ate. I'm just kidding.
We'll set up a hashtag to follow. So.
Yeah.
Hashtag Kevin's Conference Desserts.
Yeah, I'll take the batteries out of my scale.
There we go. There you go. That works perfect. All right, excellent.
But I'd love to come back on, and maybe we'll have some other people too from the team that were there as well, and they can maybe share some of the things that they experienced, and we can hear from more people.
That would be wonderful. Well, thanks for taking the time today, Kevin, and looking forward to hearing more about it when you return.
Yeah, thank you for having me today, Kate.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to Paperless Productivity, where we tackle some of the biggest paper-based pain points facing organizations today. We'll see you next time. Thanks again for joining us today for this episode of Paperless Productivity. This podcast is sponsored by ImageSoft, the paperless process people, which you can learn more about at ImageSoftInc.com. That's ImageSoftInc.com. Join us next time, where you'll learn how to harness the power of technology, supercharge efficiency, and accomplish your organization's goals.